department family who are in need of your grace, and we ask that you be with all of us as we travel home from this meeting. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, JD, would you please introduce our guests?
Sure. We've got Jason Murray from the governor's office here today, Rick Grunman with the foundation, Jeff Knack with the Corps of Engineers, Alan Stacy, waterfowl hunters or DU, Alan Stacy?
Waterfowl hunters.
Waterfowl hunters, not DU. Craig Endicott, hunters, Cheyenne Barnes and Mickey Beard, who are here to see one of our great employees, Clay Barnes, get his tenure pin today. So,
All
welcome.
right. Yes, welcome. Thank you for being
Oh,
here.
and Laura McIver sends her apologies that she got triple booked by Quail Forever and couldn't make the meeting. So it's a rare miss by Laura McIver.
Yes, yes it is. All right, and we have a few awards to present.
Yeah. Okay, is this working? Yeah. First up, let's go with Clay Barnes, our biologist at McCurtain Wildlife Management Area. He, of course, started January of 2003 as a technician at Lexington, pretty quickly transferred to McCurtain WMA, so he went from the closest to the city to the furthest from the city, basically. And was promoted to wildlife biologist there in 2017. While we don't have a title like this, Clay is basically the ODWC's red cockaded woodpecker project leader. Due to the isolation of his work location, he loves to get off the area from time to time and talk and hold real conversations with fellow employees. He completed both the Wildlife Resource Professional and Leadership Development programs, was part of the Reserve Officer program. He has 2 daughters currently attending college. That's not cheap. And he climbs pine trees for a living. Remember, they really don't have limbs, so when he goes 60 feet up in a pine tree to check nest cavities, he's doing some pretty skilled tree climbing. Just to update on the red cockaded woodpecker work. They had a record year in 2020, fledged 27 out of the 28 that were banded. 2021, they fledged 12 out of the 22 that were banded, and then 2022 fledged 20 out of the 28 were banded. So fair amount of these woodpeckers. And with that, we want to recognize Clay for his 20 years of service. Come on up. There he is. Pen, you're welcome to speak if you'd like.
I really appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed my job with the department. The department's been good to me, and it's a fun job. Sometimes I tell people I don't know what I'd do if I had to get a real job. But
Say that too loud.
Yeah, it's a real job. It's just I get to ride a four-wheeler through the beautiful mountains a big part of the year, so I really appreciate it, and I've had some really good co-workers that's made a big difference. So thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we have Russell Perry, who's a biologist at Spavinaw-Oologah. He also started January of 2003 as a technician at Cooper Fort Supply. 2010, he transferred to Copan, Eula, Osage, and then was promoted wildlife biologist on Spavinaw-Oologah in October 2013. Russell began his career again January 2003. He currently manages Spavinaw-Oologah areas that total over 29,000 acres, which includes over 750 acres of ag leases, and the Oologah Wetland Development Unit consists of 455 acres. He's a Boone and Crockett and Cy Curtis deer scorer, always assists the department with Rack Madness and other deer scoring needs. He conducts many shotgun training events to schools and civic organizations every year. Russell's very engaged in the community and helps his community both on and off work. So we congratulate for 20 years of service, Russell Perry. Okay, you want to speak? Might use the mic if you don't mind, because we do have people online, I just realized.
Okay.
Sorry I didn't make you do it. Oh, they can hear? You can speak from wherever. We've got this floating mic.
Whatever. Not a very high-tech redneck, so forgive me. But I'll echo what Clay said. This has been the fastest 20 years of my life. It's been a great run. I've enjoyed the vast majority of it. And, you know, as the old saying goes, when you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. That's where I'm at.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, JD. All right. We have Nels Rodefeld and Colin Berg on the shooting sports program. Thank you.
Chairwoman Gaddis, I'm pleased to introduce Colin Berg. Colin's a 30-year vet with the department. In fact, we'll see him probably later this summer for his 30-year pin. Colin started as believe it or not, the aquatic education coordinator in fisheries, and the first 4 months on the job, after 4 months, he was transferred to I&E, which is now Communication and Education. And from there, Colin did transition to the Northwest as the Northwest Region I&E Specialist out of Woodward office, and then came back here to the city as the education supervisor before agreeing to be transferred to the Jenks office when we needed a supervisor up there. So he's been a real versatile and well-traveled education specialist and supervisor with the department. Colin?
I'm not going to stand behind the podium. I'm going to be out here since y'all can hear me.
That's the end. Good job. Good job, Colin.
Over.
That was fast.
Interesting. Technology is always great.
Hold on. I knew this was going too smoothly.
Gotta go up to the beginning. You're on the last slide.
Yeah, all right. There we go.
There we go. Already got my introduction. We're going to talk a little bit about the accomplishments and what's coming up. This February is always the start of our spring shooting sports program season finale for our schools. It's always fun to watch. I always want to make sure folks realize that I'm just the guy that stands in front and does the talking to the commission. These are the folks that actually do all the groundwork, that work under me in the education section. Couldn't do the things that we've done across the state without folks that are on here, as well as others that have worked for us that are in other spots, either in our agency or other places across the state. But all of these folks really make the things when you come to an event happen, and so that you realize who's putting stuff together. It's those folks on that list, as well as other agency staff. When we designed our education programs and how we started things, really goes back to our archery program. This model really wasn't out yet. The R3 process that people go through, just think about how do you go through the process. There was a lot of research that showed that we needed to get our programs into schools for state wildlife agencies. When I started 30 years ago, that was the concept. Let's get our programs back into the school systems. That's the best pathway that you can follow, because that's where kids develop that social interaction that they're going to continue hopefully the rest of their life. Well, it goes into everything. If you want to play tennis, you start off as a recruit. You become aware of a tennis program, you get interest, you try it, you want to go on through it, you want to continue it. Sadly, today, a lot of our hunters and anglers aren't starting when they should traditionally have started, because there's other things that are taking up all of their time. People say time's the number one reason why they don't get out in the outdoors. So the things that we're doing in the school system are great, because this is actually, they're doing it at school. So you're going to see some pretty neat stuff. This was actually, Bruce Matthews already had the model, and this is what I developed everything off of, was that positive threshold experience. You got to have access to equipment, resource, a guide, and social support. That bottom thing, it has to be in place your entire career as a hunter or an angler. As I said, where do you develop early on in your age social support? It's your peers, it's kids at school. That's where I developed a lot of it, because when you turn 16, you get the keys in the car, mom and dad are no longer cool. So you're going to do what your cool buddies do. So if you're hunting together, you're going to go do that. In 2004, we started with 8 schools. We had a state shoot. There was actually 700 kids that participated at school, and about 200 kids that came to our first state archery shoot. Fast forward to 2022, down a little bit because of COVID as far as the number of participants. Now, you won't see 51,000 at our state shoot coming up here, but that's how many actually participate in their school system throughout the year. It's part of their physical education class or part of their BOAG class. Some schools they start day one. School doors open, they start shooting. Some schools do it 2 weeks, some schools only weeks, some schools don't come to our state shoots at all. They still offer the programs, they're just so inundated with activities about what they're doing. I visited just at Safari Club banquet with one of our teachers where I graduated high school at Fairview, and said, I know you're superintendent, you're not doing our scholastic shooting sports program. He said, Mr. Church told us I got to quit something to start something. My kids doing so many things in BOAG that we just can't take up another activity. We don't have the staff, and they've got 3 BOAG teachers. So they're just doing so much with their time traveling. That's why some of our schools don't start some of the stuff, is these teachers are not just doing one thing. It's not what they solely do. They're doing 50 things. You got kids going in every direction. But it's been very good to see. We got 680, almost 700 schools that are involved in the Archery in the Schools program. Those are the ones that we provided equipment kits to. I've done presentations before where we've shown you those kits. This one's about shoots coming up and giving you a little bit of history and background about it. It is a big deal for a lot of these schools. And some of y'all, your commissioners, have seen it happen from the beginning, have schools in your communities that are engaged in these programs. And this is what it looks like. They've got their own Facebook pages. They're traveling, not just to shoots. It started to where it's just you come to one state shoot and that's it. Now they've got a basketball schedule that's archery. They're going from school to school to school, and we require them to qualify through at least 3 shoots that we break them into tiers. And do one huge shoot that we call the Grand State Shoot, but we'll have 3 other regional shoots that are beginning school or schools that just can't send a full team. We call them Tier 2, and you can come to a state shoot and then potentially qualify to go to the Nationals. But it is a big thing, and they raise a lot of money, have a lot of support. You visit with teachers in these communities, and it's like this business is never given to anything else in our community. And when we started our archery program, they started giving to our archery program because that person was connected there. They may not have never played baseball, football, basketball. Maybe you've been to actually shoots. Dad came out and actually worked the line at shoots and got to see it there in the Tulsa area several years. And so they embrace it, and it connects. Actually, what the early research showed was it connects so much with kids that are looking for a place that it can be used to get kids back in school. We've seen that. We've heard it from our coaches that would have had, I've got one working for me now, Sean Gee, that was one of our pilot schools. He'll tell you a story of a young lady that would have dropped out. She was the only person in her family that graduated high school. And when she got to high school, she would have dropped out, just like all of her other family members had 4 or 5 brothers and sisters. And the only thing that kept her in school was archery. So that's the neat stuff. This is kind of the behind the scenes stuff. It's almost like if you went to Wildlife Expo and it's like, what happened? How did all this stuff happen? This happens in the day before the shoot, the setup, the preparation, but it's actually months of activity that go into doing these shoots for the 4,600 kids that will be there over the next couple of weeks. And I've got a great team. They've got a great system. They set it up. They kicked me out about 7 years ago. Frank, who was our coordinator at that point in time. Mark, you know him really well. Very organized, extremely organized. And I went to moving stuff around. He says, "Do you really need to be here?" You just show up. This is what I need you to do. When we have issues, you can be here. You don't need to be here. Because I've always helped set up since 2004. I've been there. And finally, he said, "Hey, we got it. You've hired great people, and they do a great job. And it's not just them on site, but we do have a strict number of people that set up on the days of setup, because our motto is work smarter, not harder. If you get people that just want to help, they show up, I want to help, I want to help. They're moving stuff in the wrong place, and you're having to move it 5 times. And it's like, we've got a system, follow the directions. If you follow the directions, we'll be able to walk tomorrow when we have to have the kids here. So if you're moving stuff over there, that's not where it's supposed to be. So we only have a few folks there. It's hard work for them, and we're all getting older. But those are the faces again. We started a program just a few years ago. We were one of the first states to start this. It's called Varsity Archery. It's Archers USA and the Archery Trade Association. Archers USA came up with a program. It's actually Dale Morrell with Morrell Targets who sponsors this program and started it. He came up with a whole system for a bow where you could set it up to anybody in just a few minutes. A compound bow where you're using a release, a sight. It's got all different sight pins. It looks kind of weird, but it works great for kids that are wanting to advance to the next level. And what we have seen, and we're pressuring other states to do, is we've been doing it since 2004, the archery program. You've got to get kids along the continuum. When my son started playing baseball, he started hitting it off the tee. Then he went to coach pitch. Then he went to kid pitch. And then they moved it back. And by the time they're in high school, they're throwing at the distance that they're throwing in the pros. What we're seeing on the National Archery in the Schools program, it's nothing against the National Archery in the Schools program. It's a great program. It's been around now since 2002. So it's 21 years old in the state of Kentucky. It's basically the same bows, the same equipment. We need to get them to progress so that when they graduate high school, they've got a different bow in their hand. This one's a hunting bow. We only use camouflage bows. That's stuff that we have to overcome sometimes when we have coaches that are like, well, they want to be able to buy their own color bows. And it's like, we want a camouflage bow, and this is why, because we got a turkey target. We designed it. We're no longer shooting at the archery target. That's the Olympic style. We're shooting at an animal target. And you see the progression. We're actually going to be moving towards an online state shoot for our high school on the NASH side so that they can still qualify for NASH nationals, or working with some school to host a NASH state shoot. But we want our high schools to progress to this, and our younger age kids, the 4th through 8th grade kids, to be able to see that you want to go on and start shooting this bow. You want to stay involved because you're going to get a different bow. It's going to turn into a different activity. And some schools really have not offered our archery program because they're like, all of our kids already have advanced equipment, some of our rural schools. But it's really important to keep them engaged because retention is just as important as recruitment. So it's a great program. It'll actually be at all of our 4 shoots. You'll be a few kids shooting this equipment. Here's one of the state shoots are coming up, February 14th, Valentine's Day. Rhonda said they're all Cupids. That's Safari Club banquet with her, and that's right. On Valentine's Day, we got kids flinging a bunch of arrows here in Oklahoma City with the Western Region State Shoot. The next day, we got another shoot that's a Central Region, and then the Eastern State Shoots the following week on the 22nd. And Grand State at the top will be the huge event, lower level of the Tulsa Expo Square building, the big building where the boat show and all that. We have the lower level, and there'll be 150, 160 targets set up there with 2 kids shooting at a time on each of those targets virtually the entire day. Last year, just kind of history, we hate to ever have to cancel anything. And some of you may have heard last year we had to cancel our state archery shoot due to weather conditions. These buildings, you have to rent them months in advance, years in advance. Once you get your week, you want to keep your week. Tulsa actually did not happen last year because of an ice storm, virtually most of the state. We had a few regions that weren't affected, and those coaches were calling like, hey, I'm talking to people up there, and it's no problem. I'm like, every school in Tulsa is closed. Do not drive. We are not going to have this. Once your grandmother who's going to be following the bus, she's going to get to I-40, and it's going to be a bad deal because the north side of the state shut down. And it really frustrated the coaches because they didn't get to showcase their kids in person. It could have cost the agency $20,000 because we have to pay either way, but the Tulsa Fairgrounds, because of our relationship, they waived that. Said you all don't have to pay. They know what the event's for. We don't charge for anything. They know that. They waived that. So if you happen to ever get a call from a coach, usually it's going to be one that's really, really high up, energetic. Their kids are doing really well. There's always reasons why we do stuff. And sometimes they don't understand it because they're just looking at their little portion, and we have to look at it as a statewide program. So they have to trust us just like we trust them. But it can cause frustration when something like that happens. I know their kids, we want to showcase their kids as much as they did. We just had to do it in a safe manner, and it was not going to be on that day. The next program that I want to talk about that's coming up, shoots will start in March and then April, are our Scholastic Shooting Sports program that we started back in 2013. This program actually got a shot in the arm from Larry and Brenda Potterfield, a big shot. They donated over $2.1 million to the agency, of which we used less than 10% of those funds for administration, and the rest went into endowments for these schools. Some of our schools have over $100,000 in their endowment program. There's ways that they can still continue to make money. You see where the money went in those different years. That really sparked our program. It's a trap-based shooting sports program. If you come to this event, we've got 215 schools that have received equipment kits, and there will be about 140 that will actually come and shoot probably this year at our regional shoots before they qualify for state. But you're going to see kids and family members that are ate up again with the shooting sports program. Again, it takes a lot of work. Starts in the fall, actually progressing, getting stuff ready. Staff work a lot to get all those people out there. Here are the dates that we've got. Come out and watch these kids shoot. Some of them are going from our shoots on when they graduate high school, going into college scholarships now, winning national titles. It's pretty neat to see. It's very humbling. Trap is based upon, and when we teach it to the schools, we teach it to the teachers. This is quail hunting. This is like you've got the trap house as your bird dog. The trap is going to come out any different direction other than back over your head like quail tend to do. But they're going to fly straight away, but at any angle. That's what trap, if you've never shot it, that's what the game is based off of, simulating hunting conditions. We use some of our local gun clubs across the state to do these shoots. You saw here in a picture, I think my next picture you see it's a big deal. Look at all the fans out there watching. Look at all the guns that are on the gun rack. There's everywhere from my granddad's 870 that was his first gun to the young lady on the side shooting probably a $4,000 to $10,000 trap gun. It's always fun to watch the shoot off. There's kids that shoot a clean score with granddad's 870 and make the shoot off because they shot 25 out of 25, and then there's kids that'll have the high dollar gun. It's not the gun, it's the person behind the gun, okay? And learning how to shoot it. I'm a good teacher, I'm not a good shoot quail. Shooting trap's not my game. I don't do well at it. It is extremely, extremely satisfying in today's world to see kids walking off of a school bus with shotguns in a shotgun case. Or when I drive through even the small town of Pond Creek on my way last year to the regional shoot in Enid and see kids that are getting their guns out of the trunk of their car. Okay, that's why this program, the way we're doing it, is so important, because we are light years ahead of other states. They can replicate this. It's not that hard. It's hard because they say they can't. That means you're not going to try. So we tried, and we did some really crazy stuff that people would say, are you sure? Yeah, we're sure, because we were sure when I approached Director Hatcher about taking the STEP program back over and not doing STEP the way we've done STEP, but turning it into a trap program, was because we do another program with FFA in the fall of the year. It began 24 years ago. And you can have guns on Oklahoma school campus. It's actually written in the school law. You can have them on there in support of a sanctioned shooting sports program at the Oklahoma Wildlife Hunter Education Program. So that happened years ago. They have 340 teams this year that participated in their shoots. This is the FFA program. We run it for them. Bring all the equipment. They don't let the kids travel with guns. We're close to letting them, even though they do. When they come to our shoot, FFA does not relinquish that to their folks to be able to travel with the guns in their program. We're close. But it's a similar deal, but they have only 4 kids on their team, junior high and high school team, and again, they use all of our equipment. And we're out there in adverse conditions everywhere from it looked like a tornado getting ready to hit there in the middle. That was at Fort Supply this year. So usually Fort Supply is, and it went from warm conditions to extreme cold, is you're wearing everything that you can, because it's October, early November when these shoots take place. And again, we try to do them no matter what. They're fun to do. And these are the people with Career Tech that we work with. They organize the event, we show up, we score it, we set up the equipment, we have scores that help do it. Sometimes it's the National Guard, sometimes it's folks that they've set up. So it's very satisfying to see kids participating in shooting sports and doing all these activities. It's something that's growing across the country. The reality is, go back one slide. If you're not aware of it right now, this was a recent survey that Southwick Associates did for the National Shooting Sports Foundation that found only 1/4, 25.8% of all of the firearms and ammunition that was purchased back in 2020 were by hunters. That means 75% is being purchased by recreational shooters. Most of that growth has been pistols and AR style rifles. We've seen a huge bump at state wildlife agencies. It's something that we're delving into. We launched a school program just a few years ago. We launched ranges on our public hunting areas. Lexington was one of the first ones. This is also on the page of the National Shooting Sports Foundation where it talks about we put in about $307,000, and you can see that annual economic impact of $1.7 million. It's being generated down in that area because of the high use. People go and shoot. They spend money on ammo. I spend money on management on my private property for deer hunting. I buy deer stands. I always never have enough deer stands. They never have enough ammo. They go shoot every weekend. I buy 1 box of shells, and unless I go through it, my 30-06, I'll have it 5 or 6 years. So recreational shooters are a constituent. They are a customer of ours. If we don't realize that, we need to. And these kids are our customers. They're growing up. Some of them are going to go quail hunting. This weekend, the final weekend, the El Reno coach that had a student at the Safari Club said they help each year the Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever banquet, and 8 of their kids are going to go on a first-time ever quail hunt the last weekend of the season with the gentleman. He said, now they're good. They're not going to shoot my dogs because my dogs are high-dollar dogs. And I said, Bill, just tell them that they're used to shooting over the top of a trap house. As long as his dogs don't jump after a bird, they'll be just fine. They might kill him so fast that his dogs are going to eat him because there's some good shooters on that team. So it's neat to see, but it's also this last slide that I'm ending on is something that now I'm over shooting ranges. Have a new staff member. You've seen presentations on it before. I've got about 2.5 years left in my career that I'm going to work, and you're going to get a solid 2.5 years out of me. I didn't retire yesterday. I'm not going to retire until I walk out the door and say I'm retired. But they are a constituent. In a lot of cases, we don't look at that. They're not buying a hunting license yet, unless they're shooting on our ranges, but they're producing a lot of money. And they are potential hunters. They just need somebody. They're the ones that missed. Didn't have somebody to take them, but they go hunting if you ask them. Any questions?
So shooting sports, I think is one of the best things you guys have done. My grandson just started shooting bow in grade school. The number of parents and kids, but the Altus has had quite a bit of success. They've got a really good program, good team, and a lady that's an assistant superintendent of Altus Schools approached me last year. And I guess what I want to challenge you with is she said it was a little bit anticlimactic that they won, but there wasn't much, you know, they were kind of expecting something and there wasn't much there. And I've been thinking about it, and I'm willing to help with it, but trying to come up with something special we can do for those state and national winners. This lady went on to tell me that she says it's one of the best. Altus is building a huge new facility just for bow right now.
That's awesome.
And
Wow.
she said that these, the shooters are kids that aren't involved in athletics. A lot of them are kind of loners. They're out there, and it's something that somehow attracts them. She said it's one of the best things they've got going on in their Altus public schools
I believe
as far as getting kids involved in something. And they practice every single day. I mean, it's a rigorous, but I'd like to challenge you a little bit. Come up, I don't know who we work with or how we do it, if we can raise money through some of the bow people or whatever, but to come up with something, whether it's just a jacket or it's something that's special for them that they're kind of working toward. If
Yeah,
they
it's a great idea.
You know,
Yeah.
what made it really anticlimactic for them was they would have been at the,
It was
Right.
canceled
I
last year.
know.
That's what I was gonna ask. I think she said that because there was no state shoot for them to go to and be recognized and celebrate, right?
You know, the Altus,
get them also to come to a day at the Capitol, work with their folks to bring them here to the Capitol to walk teams each year as well, so they get
we
recognized.
may be doing more than I know about, but anyway,
Last year was a weird, it's the one time since we started it that we did not get to do one of our shoots.
Yeah.
right.
It was the Grand State. So it hurt the most because it was like, these are the kids that start almost day one. And Altus is one that, it started probably 4 years ago. And they didn't just jump in, they dove in. I mean, they went in big. So, and they're recruiting a lot of local schools that helped us grow in that southwest area.
Yes, that's a great.
You're doing a great job. I mean,
Yes, and I was going to say the same thing, and thank you for that idea. That's a great idea, Rick. Thank you and your team for all the work. I've just, in the 8 years that I've been here, it's just, I've seen the progression of it, and it's so cool. And I would encourage each of the commissioners here, if you haven't already, to get to know your educators and your coaches and offer, you know, any way we can help to get them set up and get them connected with Colin and our department, because that's the first step. But thank you.
You all.
Thank you.
Always thank you.
Waiting list to participate.
We start collecting the school names in the fall, and we did this year, since we didn't have Expo, we were able to do trainings in September, that we got caught up, and now we've got schools that will be coming online and starting in May, June, July. So we always have schools that want to get online. It's a matter of, do we have time to train them during this time of year when we're doing all the other stuff? So we kind of got that training format that goes from May now through September. And we start the FFA state shoots, and it goes from there.
Col-
Not fast, 30
Colin,
years has been a
to follow up on Commissioner Holder's suggestion, why are we not giving these state champions all-state jackets like athletics and band and everything else? They ought to get an all-state jacket. They're distinctive. Everybody who's involved with stuff kind of knows somebody's got an all-state jacket on. That means something. That's something we might look at also.
Definitely do that. That's something that
Budget.
hits budget.
I'm sure.
He knows what he's gonna hear from.
That's why I was looking at
Yeah, he's looking right at me. What are you gonna say, JD? Budget constraints.
But sponsorships, you know, we could solicit and try to get outside help. A lot of good ideas. Any other questions or?
Commitment. The commission's always been committed to this as well, as well as all the other divisions help out with those shoots. throughout the year, so we couldn't do it. You saw 9 staff members up there. There's no way that we could do this without full agency support. So,
Y'all do a great job. Thank you. All right, item number 8 on the agenda, we have Bill Dinkins.
Yeah, well, he's coming up.
Oh,
Maybe not stealing his thunder. I hope I'm not stealing his thunder, but every year we, get, especially when the legislative session starts ramping up, we get lots of questions, proposals. We need to go to $1 limit. We need to be a draw-in state for non-residents. We need to be $1 only state. Lots of other ideas, and I'm sure you hear them from the folks in your districts all the time. We've got enough new commissioners on here that we thought it might be good just to have the Deer 101 and update and look at the numbers and that sort of thing. So, did I steal your thunder, Bill?
Pretty much stole it all. Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
So, yeah, JD did hit some of the points I was going to bring up. As Dallas Barber's working his way up here, our big game biologist. So, yeah, we're coming on the heels of a very successful deer season. Dallas is going to tell us all about it. It is that time of year when we get lots of ideas thrown at us. Here's what you should do, here's what you shouldn't do. But today, Dallas is going to talk about our strategy that we have in place. They gave this presentation, Jerry Shaw and Dallas gave it in 2019, I believe. It's going to just basically show you what I consider a very successful story of management so far. Record harvest this year. Now I'm stealing some of Dallas's thunder, but
My first couple slides.
with that, I'll turn it over to Dallas, and he can tell you about our deer management strategy.
You going? We good to go? Okay, thank you guys for having me this morning. I appreciate some of your time. My name's Dallas Barber. I'm our big game biologist, which means that I take care of our deer, elk, and antelope statewide. But here we're going to talk a little bit about our deer program. So, to know where we're going, we kind of got to know where we've been. Oklahoma, our deer herd has come a long way since the estimated 500 animals statewide in 1917. So from the 30s, I just don't want to be back. I feel like
People
I'm
with John,
everybody back.
some of us have John Deere here.
So from the 30s to the 80s, focus was really placed on protection and restoration. So we were restoring habitat, we were restoring populations, we were moving deer from one place to the other, trying to get a robust deer population, and we achieved that. So the 90s were really focused more on maintenance. You get into the 2000s, a lot more things are coming into the fold there, so we're starting to worry about overall deer herd health. We're worrying about hunter satisfaction, and landowner desires are starting to be a priority for us. So today, we really base a lot more on quality management, which is balancing deer numbers with available habitat. We put a lot of focus on sex ratios and increasing hunter awareness on their role as a deer manager, leading to an increase in mature bucks in the harvest and minimizing human and deer conflicts. So you'll hear a lot, we say that our deer hunters are our deer managers. We can sit here as biologists and state biologists and recommend things, but it's really our hunters that are putting those into action. So again, while we don't necessarily manage specifically for trophy deer, what we do is manage for healthy, well-balanced sex and age ratios, which are more likely to produce large antlers and stable populations. So have we been successful? A couple pictures from the last couple seasons here. This is some interesting data that I wanted to show you guys. We come up with this Hunters in the Know Take a Doe campaign. This graph represents age of bucks at harvest in 1989. So really, I'm going to flip through a couple pie graphs here, and if you would, pay attention to that yellow portion. That represents bucks that were 1.5 years old when they were harvested, right? So in 89, we're looking at 66%. You run 10 years down the road to 99, we're at 56%. 2009, we're down to 30%. Starting to see a lot more diversity in that age at harvest, right? 2018, we cut it in half again. And then this is the one from not this current last season, but the 21-22 season, we're down to 11%. a lot more. The bulk of that harvest, over half of it, is coming from 3.5 and 4.5-year-old bucks, and all of that was done via education and not necessarily regulation. So another representative of that is our Cy Curtis program. That's our in-state records keeping program. Minimum requirements for that are going to be 135 inches as a typical, 150 inches as non-typical. Since 2019, we've had 254 bucks that have been entered into that Cy Curtis program. Now, granted, those are people that want to have that deer entered into that program. Much like, we'll look at Boone and Crockett here. The same story goes there. We've had quite a few bucks entered into Boone and Crockett since 2015, but not everybody wants to give away where they're hunting, or for folks to know that they're harvesting, good deer. But since 15, we've had 81 bucks entered into that Boone and Crockett Club. For those of you that are unaware of what that is, it's a national records program. The standard of entry for that is quite a bit higher, between 3-year and all-time records, 160 inches for a 3-year typical record, 170 inches for a typical all-time record, and then get into the non-typical stuff, and some scores start getting really big, 185, 195 for 3-year and all-time records. So we're 13th in the number of typical deer in Boone and Crockett. Texas winds up at 10th with almost 4 times the amount of land that we do. So by acre, we're kind of holding our own with some states that carry quite a bit of clout. Our management, we're science-based and human-driven. So management decisions like season dates, bag lengths, open areas, where we're hunting, where we're not hunting, rely on ecological, biological, and even social factors. So deer pop dynamics rely solely on hunting as the management tool, and we need a cooperation between ourselves with the department, hunters, and landowners to achieve those goals. So just a little bit of data here from some of our big game reports. This is our total harvest from 2004 to current. You can see that we're trending upwards quite a bit here since about 2015. And antlerless harvest is really starting to make up a good portion of our harvest. So here is that number. You'll see that there's a little asterisk by 22. That's because we have not really scrubbed all of that data yet. I just wanted to get kind of a trend line put together for you guys to see. So speculation there, but it shouldn't really change too terribly much at all. But this is antlerless harvest by the percent of the total. So our goal is to have it there above that 40% line. So we have achieved that over the last 3 years, with this last year being really awesome, sitting around 45% total antlerless harvest. Talking about data driving season time. So this time of year, actually, as soon as I leave you guys, I'm heading out to continue our herd health evaluation project, where we look at fetal length measurements to determine rut timing. So that's a graph of all of this data that we've accumulated over the last 10 or so years. Every one of those blue bars is a date, and on the left-hand side is the number of conceptions that we've observed on those dates. So a pretty good, nice bell curve for us to look at, with the bulk of our breeding and conception happening, from about November 7th to about the 18th is kind of the bulk of that curve. And you can see that we use that data to set our season dates. So there was muzzleloader for this last year was there at the front end of that peak rut, and our gun season really catches the tail end of that rut. So again, using people for game management. This is a question that was asked in our game harvest survey, and it's been asked multiple times. And it asks which of the following choices is most important for a successful deer hunting experience. And you see an overwhelming number of people just want to see deer of both sexes, regardless of size or quality. They enjoy seeing deer. So with hunters having diverse sets of goals, you notice that it wasn't 100% of people just want to see deer. There's a lot of people that want to see bigger bucks, or some that just that's all they really care about seeing. So we decide to educate instead of regulate, and the results of that have been positive in regards to overall harvest, including antlerless harvest and trophy deer being harvested. So another pat on the back for a lot of our folks here with the department is, we manage almost 1.4 million acres of public hunting land, which is only 3% of the total land mass for the whole state. But off of that, we're harvesting anywhere between 6 and 7% of our total deer harvest comes off of our public lands. So they're holding their own, as far as the number of deer that are coming from these quality management areas that we get blessed to manage. So you can see there from 15 to 21, usually always comes in right there between 6 and 7%. So a good pat on the back for our guys that are managing those areas. Antlerless management efforts. So the last handful of years, I remember the last time we came and talked, there was quite a bit of heat on the number of deer that were in certain parts of the state. We've come up with a couple different campaigns, management efforts for antlerless deer. I'm sure a lot of you guys are all familiar with most of these: Hunters in the Know Take a Doe, our DMAP campaign, youth rifle seasons, holiday antlerless seasons. The list goes on and on as far as options that we have put out there on the table for our hunters to manage deer at their discretion. So deer management will continue to evolve as deer populations, constituents' desires, land use, landowner needs change, management changes follow. So we need to continue adequate antlerless harvest. That's something that we're not going to be able to let off the gas on, because we'll be right back where we started if we do. Benefits of adequate antlerless harvest include better regulation of deer populations, which lead to a reduction of landowner concerns about crop loss. We're helping relieve skewed buck-to-doe ratios, improving the health of bucks, does, and fawn. The list goes on for tons of things that are benefits for our management of antlerless deer. So the last time we talked, we had a goal to increase antlerless harvest. So we took action. We reduced doe day restrictions across a couple different antlerless zones in the state. We increased antlerless bag limits for muzzleloader and gun seasons. We increased the holiday antlerless season length and bag limits. And our folks at C&E heavily promoted antlerless deer harvest through all of their outlets. And with putting those plans into action, you can see this is another graph of that antlerless harvest, percent of antlerless harvest for total. We leapt back up into that 40 to 45% range, which is right where we want to be. So what's our future hold? We will look for opportunities to continue building on the great success story that is Oklahoma deer management, using new technologies to survey, communicate, educate hunters and landowners, balancing that resource with the wants and needs of our constituents. We'll work to ensure future generations have greater opportunities than we do today. So future opportunities, this is stuff that we've looked at as far as our current resident license structure. We want to make it as simple as possible. So simplifying that license by offering combo license. I could talk R3 to death, but you guys hear that just about every month, so it follows along with a lot of those ideals as well. It will increase antlerless harvest because it makes it easy. They already have a lot of those licenses with some of the license proposals that I believe are coming forth from some of our recommendations. The non-resident discussion points, whether it be competition, if that's perceived or actual, non-resident buck limits, non-resident bag limits, and altering that non-resident license structure are all things that are on the table for discussion. So some other folks who are taking notice, the QDMA, who's now the NDA, we were their Agency of the Year in 2014. We've top 10 for North American Whitetail in 17-18. I mean, there's a lot of accolades there, quite a few of them here from the last handful of years down at the bottom of that list. I mean, making the cover of North American Whitetail last year with a Sooner State shocker, as they claimed it to be. But great deer regardless of where it came from, but we're proud that that one came from right here. If you guys have any questions, I'd love to chat with you. If not, I appreciate your time.
Any data, the buck age structure data?
Yeah, so you're talking about all of the pie charts that were right up here at the very beginning, right? So that's all obtained from first of all, our DMAP properties. So we've got, a little over 100 cooperators there. It's up almost to, I want to say, 500,000 acres that we're collaborating with on management there. Controlled hunts that we put on, and then we also have student jaw pullers that go out to taxidermists and meat processors across the state for that opening day of rifle season. We've also made it really easy for folks because they can hop online and use our Age My Deer process, which you just hop online, snap a couple pictures, it gets sent to us. we age all of that. So there's a multitude of ways that we're pulling that jaw data.
Very interesting. Great information. Any more questions for Dallas?
I really appreciate this presentation. I can't speak for the rest of the commissioners, but I get a lot of contacts about this. People are very passionate, so I think it's good that you guys know that you guys are watching this, and these truly is a huge success story. So thank you for this.
Yes, thank you. Any other?
I might just add one more thing. Clayton, I actually read all that legal research you put together over the weekend. Yes, I have no life, but reading legal reviews over the weekend. But it was in the context of another question when it comes to what you can do with non-resident license prices and restrictions. But I think it's also important, in addition to the great biological success that you see here, which doesn't really indicate a need to make many changes from a biological standpoint. There's been quite a bit of litigation across the country against states that have tried to implement undue restrictions on non-residents, just sort of cave into that political pressure and trying to cut down on competition with non-residents, and so I think if we make any moves, if the legislature with regard to licensing makes any moves, we're always going to need to kind of keep that in mind as well.
Yep.
Good. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dallas.
Good job, Dallas.
Thank you, yes. Okay, next item on the agenda is to consider and vote to either approve, amend, reject, or take other action on the minutes for the January 3rd meeting. Can we have roll call, please?
Move to approve.
Roll call?
Commissioner Mabry?
Aye.
Commissioner Beal? Commissioner Barwick? Commissioner Holder? Commissioner Zelps? Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. And our director's report by JD.
Great. Well, you've got a couple of reports in your packets. It's that time of year, being opening day of the legislative session. So I believe last meeting, we introduced our new legislative liaison, Catherine Appling-Pooler. So I'm going to ask her to come up first. I think you've got the legislative tracking list in your packets. She may just want to highlight a couple of things, but really kind of focus on our license proposal for this legislative session. I'll remind everybody, like I reminded our staff last week, that roughly 10% of what gets filed makes it to the governor's desk at the end of the day. So just because you see nearly 40 bills proposed that deal with wildlife in one shape or form doesn't mean, in fact, next time we get together, after a committee deadline is passed, we expect to see a significant number of those bills go by the wayside. So, but if you do have any questions about bills in particular, let us know. But Catherine, take it away.
Thank you. So good morning. Session has kicked off today, so we are in it and ready to go. We are tracking roughly 35 bills and have one request bill, which is Senate Bill 941. We have been working with the author, Senator Bullard, on that, and the intent of that bill is to modernize and streamline our licenses. Since it is first day, not a huge update. We're just tracking where these bills fall in committee. But as we move along, I'll be providing more detailed updates. The first deadline is February 27th, I believe. So we'll definitely have more information then. But if you have any concerns about any bills, please let me know. I'm happy to provide more information on that or gather more information if necessary. So are there any questions to begin with, or? Oh, yes.
I do have a question. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I noticed that Representative Humphreys is requesting a $10,000 increase on salaries. Did he come up with that, or is that originated from somewhere else, or do you know the origin of that?
We did not request that bill. We only have one request bill. But we are going to be speaking with him and seeing the intent of that bill and how to come to a...
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be speaking with a lot of these authors this week as they come back into town, just to kind of see what's driving it, what's motivating it, that kind of thing.
Any other questions for Catherine?
I'm all for it if they'll fund it. I'm for it if they don't fund it too, but.
Were you gonna do a quick overview of our request
Yes.
bill? Is that, yeah, Senate Bill 941?
Yes, so Senate Bill 941. So in order to modernize and streamline our licenses, we are consolidating 51 licenses and tags into 14. Now, that is not all of our license and tags. We've just kind of picked the main ones to consolidate. Specifically, a big one will be a youth super license. So youth licenses there's quite a few, so we're planning or proposing to consolidate that into one license. So you just have to pick the one super youth license, and then youth will be able to hunt or fish. So with that helps with the recruitment and just education for youth. But also we saw that there wasn't really a standardized youth age in the statute, so we're creating a standard youth age in that. That way there's not any confusion. And then we're also doing bundles. So from some of the research we found, hunters and anglers are more interested in licensed bundles. So that just creates more ease for our hunters and anglers, in regards to a customer service perspective of making it easier for them to obtain them.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of that proposal you all have seen before. The big difference this year is after trying a couple of years in a row to take all the licenses out of statute and let the commission have the authority to consolidate and clean up all the licenses and set the fees by rule, failing that a couple of years, and then talking to the chairs of the wildlife committees, which are carrying the bills, authors of the bills, they felt like our best bet is just to put our license proposal in statute. You know, it's not ideal, it'll be locked in statute, and maybe, hopefully it's not another 20 years before we can update things, which is the last time we were able to do a significant update of the licenses, but that just seems to be more realistic, more feasible to do at this point in time, so that's what we'll be doing. But the actual proposal itself is essentially the same thing we were floating around last year. A couple of tweaks just based on the authors wanting to, you know, for example, our research from Southwick and Associates that we've done a couple of years ago showed that lifetime combo license ought to be priced at $1,200. The authors thought that was a little steep, so they're wanting to drop that sum to $1,023, nice round number. But they thought that would help signify that it's happening in the year 2023. I said, well, we could do $2,023 and it would really signify the year 2023, but they weren't going for that. So, and ones that, you know, we just finished talking about deer, so everybody's interested in deer. The proposal would have a season license for residents. You know, right now we have a season deer license for non-residents, and this would offer a season license for residents. And so all the, you know, archery season, that's 6 deer that come along with that deer license. The proposed price on that is $35. So right now you're buying a $20 tag, and you have to pick either antlered or antlerless if you're a resident. So for just $15 more, you can get the full season license and shoot antlered and antlerless. Helps us with that deer management, encouraging more antlerless harvest, and a much better deal, of course. If you buy more than one deer tag every year, then this is a better price point for you. So just an example, non-residents, the proposal is, you know, right now they're paying $300 for that season license. The proposal that's being discussed still is that be a $200 license per season, but that they have to buy an annual hunting license on top of that, which is $180. So it's actually $380 for a non-resident to hunt a deer season versus $300. And again, there's, you know, a lot of push and pull over at the Capitol over what non-residents pay to hunt deer. And I know a lot of our residents would like to see that increase so much that nobody comes from out of state to hunt deer here, but we know that's got legal problems and would have huge budget impacts for the department, which means less money for deer management across the state too. So anyway, we're trying to strike that balance. And because everybody's tuned in right now and I got everybody's attention talking deer licenses, I'm sure it's worth noting that the introduced version of this bill does not reflect all of the changes. They ended up just kind of getting something filed by the deadline, and now we're working with the authors to get revised language in there. So if you happen to pull up the bill and read it and don't see a lot of things, in fact, there are some kind of errors that were made to, like striking totally the deer archery license. Well, that needs to be restored. We want a deer archery season and several other things like that. So if you happen to read it, please don't panic. Yeah. Anything else to add on that one, or any questions, or we'll just continue to keep everybody updated.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, and we wish you the best this session.
Fun times,
Yeah.
here it comes. So the rest of the director's report, you've got a couple of reports in your packet. On the federal report, I will just point out that we have a new senator, Mark Wayne Mullen, that replaced Jim Inhofe. And since Brittany's report was turned in for you all to review, we have learned that they've gotten committee assignments. And so Senator Mullen will be on Armed Services, Indian Affairs. Importantly for us, he'll be on Environment and Public Works Committee, which Inhofe was ranking member and at one point chairman of, and that's a critically important committee for us and our sphere of things. In fact, the Corps of Engineers budget and everything else goes before that committee as well. So it'll be good to have Senator Mullen replacing Inhofe on that committee and hopefully building up some tenure in that capacity. On the state side, you've got, you know, calendar items there. Note that Rack Madness will be here on Friday, February 24th at the headquarters building if you're interested in that. Last I checked, I think we already had 100 or so registered for that, and that probably is 200? Wow, that changed quite a bit since the last time that I saw the numbers. So it sounds like it's shaping up to be madness. And then the legislative fish fry at the Capitol, April 26th. You might want to get that on your calendars as well. Lots going on across the agency and admin, in fisheries, continuing to stock and paddlefish, netting and research going on with a huge uptick, it sounds like, in paddlefish captured on Caw Reservoir. So pretty similar numbers on Grand Oolagaw and others, but C&E division, I'll just point out, because we were talking about education seeming to be working for us when it comes to our hunters helping manage the deer herd, and some of the work C&E does is a big part of that as well, with Michael working with our partnership with Onyx to push out notification to 72,000 Oklahomans about the holiday antlerless opportunity and that kind of thing. So those sorts of things happening, lots going on in Wildlife Division as well, with roads and maintenance and flying population surveys. I know they've done a lot of waterfowl population surveys by air, and pronghorns going on right now or just wrapped up, and so counting those animals. Law Enforcement Division, note they had a big special investigators training at Arcadia January 17th and 19th with a number of game wardens getting trained in special investigation work. Probably most notable in law enforcement, 21 interviews of potential game warden candidates to fill what is 12 openings across the state right now. So be some new game warden hires coming on board very soon, and going through a even more improved game warden academy that Captain Loftus put together. So Rick, did you have any updates for the foundation? One?
I could.
Yep.
Thank you, JD. Again, Rick Runman with the Oklahoma Wildlife Conservation Foundation. JD mentioned the Rack Madness. The foundation is again purchasing a lifetime license as the grand prize and providing some other sponsorship materials, and will be on site all day to provide more information on the foundation through that. We're finalizing plans on a sporting clays fundraising event as well at the Cedar Gate for Friday, May 15th, and you'll be receiving material on that, and it will be going online shortly as we put the committee together on that. And we're also working on the Hackberry Flat project with the Bill Crawford, the renaming of the building after Bill Crawford down there, and kicking off a capital fundraising campaign there. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
What was the date again of the shooting event?
Sporting Clays shoot will be Friday, May 12th at the Cedar Gate in Kingfisher. And part of the partnership there's actually one of the stations has the logos for the department and the foundation out there, so everybody that shoots out there gets to see our logos out there, and we'll be having a good fundraiser, upwards of hopefully up to 60 teams of 4 people shooting stuff. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. All right, is that everything in the director's report?
That's it, yes,
All right,
thank you.
Thank you, JD. Our next item, we have CFO Amanda Stork with the financials.
Good morning. Okay, so today I have for you the financial statements for July 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022. So our first 6 months of the fiscal year is complete. On your first report, we have a combined balance sheet for all fund types and account groups for the year ending December 31st, 2022. As of the end of the year, our liabilities and fund balance is $475,812,033. Of that, our liabilities are $21,807,300. And compared to last year, our total liabilities and fund balance is $493,840,483. Our trust fund balance on our combined balance sheet, our expendable trust fund balance is $22,126,581. Our non-expendable trust fund balance is $101,599,833. Our pension trust balance is $117,723,336, and our DC trust defined contribution is $6,278,769 for a total of $247,728,519. Our combined statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the end of the year. Our total revenue is $29,339,374. Our total expenditures for the month was $27,696,048. leaving us in excess of $1,643,326. And our combined statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for our trust funds. As of December 31st, our total operating revenue is $5,336,966. Operating income of $653,242, and net income for the month of $653,242. And our total fund balance, as I stated before, is $225,601,938 compared to last year of $249,024,736. For our wildlife contributions report for December, our total is $20,250. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Amanda? Does this need to be voted on? Any questions for Amanda? Do we have a motion to accept? And, okay, and roll call, please.
Commissioner Mabry? Commissioner Deal? Commissioner Barwick? Commissioner Holder? Commissioner Zeltz? Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. All right, motion carries. Thank you, Amanda. And I believe there's one more item that,
Yeah, and I do have a license report, real quick. Our number of licenses sold was up 5% from January of 2022. Our resident fishing is up 22%. Our resident hunting is down 8%. Our resident combo is up 3%. Non-resident hunting is down 15%, and non-resident fishing is up 7%. Overall, our lifetimes are down 8% last month, and our senior lifetimes are up 16% last month because of a new eligibility year.
okay. Information. All right,
Our budget request, our budget add-on.
Budget add-on.
Yeah.
we have a budget add-on. Is she ready?
Okay, sorry, I don't know if you're gonna announce it or not. So we have a budget add-on for mid-year. Both of those are in the wildlife division. One is for $21,112.52. It's a state wildlife grants project for mussel habitat, pass-through project, and all funds are matched by OSU. And then our second one is for $29,945. It's for buffalo fishes, OSU, pass-through grant, all matched, provided by OSU. So for the total of $51,057.52, and it's net cost to the department of $0.
Okay. So we have budget item add-on, and I guess we have a motion to accept it. And roll call, please.
Commissioner Mabry? Commissioner Deal? Commissioner Barwick? Commissioner Holder? Commissioner Zeltz? Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate that. All right, so before we proceed to item 13, I need to address the commission and make sure you all should have received an email outlining all of the information and rule change proposals by the Department of Wildlife that's on our agenda today. The email also included all the comments throughout the state, both online, email, and mail-in, and some verbal ones from the public hearings. So at this time, we'd like to poll the members of this commission to make sure that you had not only received those, but had an opportunity to review them and consider them, all the comments in connection with the proposed changes.
Commissioner Mabry? Commissioner Deal? Commissioner Barwick? Commissioner Holder?
Yes.
Commissioner Zeltz?
Yes.
Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Yes. All right, and we have Nels Rodefeld to begin with the changes.
Commissioners, I have in this first section, Chapter 1, Subchapter 15, Hunter Education Rules. 2 changes are being proposed. One is a pretty minor housekeeping change. The other is a proposal to reduce the minimum length of the course from 8 hours to 6 hours. Answer any question?
Any questions for Nels regarding this particular change?
I know some public comments that some were concerned about adequate safety. I mean, cutting it down 2 hours. What's your take on that?
So there's 10 chapters, and at 6 hours, that's still 30 minutes per chapter. We have viewed this course for a number of years now as it's a foundational introduction for students to safety, to a lifetime of safety. We're not going to teach somebody to be safe in 6 hours, 8 hours, or even 20 hours. We can teach them some basic principles of firearms handling in particular, but they need to be continue to be mentored. And our hope is that by tightening up the course, we can make it where they take more away from the day, from that introductory day. And what we see across the country on hunter education courses is a move towards more personal responsibility and less government regulations. Some of these courses over the years have been as many as 20 hours. We've never had a 20-hour class, but we did have 10 hours for many years. We went to 8. We think it's the right time to go to 6. So there were comments both for and against the proposal, but we feel like we would continue to recommend it. So.
Thanks, Nels.
I would move to approve.
Ms. Chairwoman, the Rules Committee met and considered the public comments and recommendation from staff, and the committee recommends approval as presented.
I'll second that.
And you made the motion.
Motion.
I second the motion.
Motion.
Get that straight.
All right, we have the motion. Let's roll call.
Commissioner Mabry?
Aye.
Commissioner Deal?
Aye.
Commissioner Barwick? Commissioner Holder? Commissioner Zelfs? Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. All right. Confused here. All right, and item 14, Bill Jenkins, some more Title 8 and review changes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Gaddis. So Wildlife Division, for the most part, had about 13, looks like, proposals in Chapter 25, which we're going to talk about first. You know, I appreciate all the public input. We had over 88 pages, I believe, of online comments, a few write-ins, and then the public hearing that we had here. We actually only had one person show up for that, but glad he was here. So yeah, we have several items on here, and we can go through them individually, or I can just kind of hit the high points, whichever y'all prefer. But overall, go ahead.
I'm going to say, if you want to proceed with the
High points.
high
Okay.
points, it'd be great.
So we had several requests from Corps of Engineers, like we do every year. Some of them were to reduce a few acres for safety reasons. A marina came in, whatever the case may be. Some of them were actually proposals for smaller properties that were archery only, and they're opening them up for archery and shotgun with pellets. So a few of those. The big one that several of us in the room are probably going to talk about a little more is the duck blind, changing seasonal duck blinds to daily duck blinds. That was actually a Corps of Engineer request. We have several of these emergency rules that are in place already dealing with the air-powered air rifles. We're just going through the process to make those permanent now. Allowing them for gun season only, requiring the $20 one-time fee. And like I said, we've covered those in emergency status, and this will make them permanent. Request to extend squirrel season through the end of February. Request came from some squirrel hunting groups that requested that because of a little more, they call it leaf-off hunting opportunity. In other words, hunting squirrels when the leaves are not on. We had a few we had one carryover with the removing the handgun minimum barrel length, and then our emergency chronic wasting disease selected surveillance area. Again, that was an emergency status that y'all passed. That's just making it permanent. And then the last couple in 25 are dealing with beehives and bears. We really didn't have a protocol to address those situations for bears destroying beehives, and I guess the advantage to adding them to our nuisance wildlife control procedures, if you will, is now there's a mechanism in place, just like we do for deer and elk. So we have a procedure. When we have a complaint, we go through it, and we may or may not issue depredation tags. So in a nutshell, that is all the Chapter 25 rules proposed. We have visited with our staff, and based on everything that we have read from our public comments to staff recommendations, recommendation today is to go forward with all of them as submitted in Chapter 25.
And Madam Chair, we do have some that have requested to speak on this item. A couple, I'm a little confused, didn't necessarily say request to speak, but there's some suggestion they might. So let me clarify. Alan Stacy, do you intend to speak to this item?
I'd like to briefly do so.
Okay. I've got Craig signed up to do it for sure. Ray Penny, you're not? Okay. Just making sure. So I've got 4 then with Alan Stacy's clarification that have requested to speak. I would suggest, Madam Chair, that we start with the Corps of Engineers who has signed up to speak, since this particular, I assume all are interested based on what you've signed up here for, the waterfowl hunting blinds, the proposal to take that from seasonal to daily on the 4 remaining reservoirs where that's not the case. And I would suggest we start with the Corps of Engineers who made the request in the first place, unless you want to do it differently.
No, I think that's fine. Do we need to kind of establish?
Yeah, do you want a time limit of
5
minutes
now?
per, something like that, max? I know Ben can talk a lot longer than that, so
It's going to be tough, JD.
we need to limit it, if for nobody else, Ben's sake, please.
Okay.
Mr. Knack.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak. Yes, this was a request proposed by the Corps of Engineers. A little background history why we did that. A few years ago, we looked at this very thing. It was offered, the permanent duck blind, at least for the duck season, drawing at several reservoirs. We looked at that and gave it some consideration. We submitted a request then. Some changes were made, some lakes were reduced off of that list. There's still some more that was remaining. Obviously there is, because that's why we have this request in front of you. We got to looking at what was going on and occurring with those items, and the lakes that were reduced off of it, we noticed that we didn't really receive in our office any public complaints about having a duck blind for the season. There was a daily duck blind opportunity for everybody. The public was allowed to hunt wherever they wanted to, as far as if it was open and ready any day of the week. They didn't have to have a blind, so to speak, drawn out. I recognize that other offices and agencies may have got different feedback. We have multi-use, so we get public information across the spectrum, just not from the sportsmen and women of the state. But with that said, we worked with our local representatives from ODWC and thought, well, maybe it's time to request the remainders be reduced. We did so. We submitted the request, thinking it was a good idea, again, offering total public opportunity for waterfowl hunters to be able to enjoy the sport. And one of the reasons why we got to thinking about it is we're a large district. We have 38 lakes, and we cover 3 states, and there's only a handful of our lakes that have permanent duck blind drawing available. And we recognize that it's decades of opportunity that was afforded to sportsmen and women. But should this pass, the duck hunting is still available for the public to enjoy. And with that consideration, we thought open doors for some people that may not have opportunities to have the duck blinds, or at least get to the spots where the duck blinds are drawn at. And we believe that it generates more public availability. And therefore, that's why we submitted the request, and looking forward to the consideration of the commission. I'm assuming that alarm meant 5 minutes?
No, actually, I heard that alarm and I thought, I forgot to set my alarm. That's a good reminder. We'll at least have it in place for Ben.
So with that being said, it's just, in consideration of the, we look at all our other 38 lakes, and do we receive requests to have duck season blinds available, and that's not the case at our other lakes. Assuming that extrapolates to these lakes specifically, that's why we submitted the request. We do get some public that have concerns about duck blinds that remain after the duck hunting season is over. That's probably a small portion, but it does happen. We have to work on enforcing getting those removed at the end of the year. All right, thanks for the consideration.
Yeah, and I think we put the Corps' request in everybody's packet as well. I don't know if anybody has questions for Jeff while he's here or not, but just sorry if it puts you on the spot. But Bill, there's a little bit of, yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Jeff, if you don't mind, the proposal y'all mentioned, trash and debris in the lake, can you bring that up a little bit as far as your justification?
Yeah, flood control lakes, that's what we do. We go up and down. We hold water, we have to taper our water release. So whenever we flood in that situation, we're typically going to ruin a lot of duck blinds. And when I mean it breaks up, whatever, it ends up back in the reservoir and it floats around during those flood control operations. But specific to the river, maybe not as much, but the other reservoirs we do hold water, and that's what happens. It does create a debris concern during those events. Any other questions?
Well, and then by way of background too, you mentioned, I guess, 2019, I think, the rule change proposal came forward, and as I recall, about half of the lakes being proposed to go from seasonal to daily blinds were approved to go to daily blinds. So you mentioned earlier the earlier proposal, and so all that's really left are these 4 core properties. And you cover 3 states at the Tulsa district. Are these the only 4 reservoirs in all 3 states that are seasonal duck blinds?
Yes, sir. Only 4.
Okay.
And we don't get requests either for seasonal duck blinds at the other reservoirs. And again, I respect, we got to be careful as a federal agency. We don't own or manage the wildlife. We own the property and provide the opportunities, so to speak. But states get to manage the wildlife. We may not. Yes, sir.
Is there a process where a request like that would be considered? A lake that's not by statute open for a seasonal blind, if you got an individual request?
So that request would work through the state, since they're managing the waterfowl hunting opportunity. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Next up would be Craig Endicott.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity today to come and talk to y'all, and Madam Chairwoman, the Commission, and Director. Appreciate this chance to get up and address this. And I respect the Chief and the other field employees' comments on this. There's a few items that I don't particularly agree with, but that's all right. I'm not going to get too deep into the woods here, and I've got that five minute deal.
It's going.
Don't
Yeah.
set your clock on. So basically, I stood here before you 3 years ago on this exact same proposal, and at that time, the commission rescinded it for these lakes over here. They further went on to establish a committee of Wildlife Department personnel and hunters to look at the system as it was and make improvements on it. I was on that committee, obviously, and I think we did do that. I definitely think we improved it. We made a few changes, and a couple of things that have, well, I would ask what's really happened or what's changed in the last 3 years. Is there something that's really changed in the last 3 years? Have there been problems with it? If there were, then why was not the committee brought back in to work and address problems that came up in the last 3 years? And that goes from some others that were on the committee made that comment to me. And obviously the Corps requested that this go on here. I don't know if they filled out the rule proposal itself, but that's kind of secondary. And Jeff makes a point on opportunity. So I'd like to touch on opportunity very first. We're often told that these seasonal blinds prevent people from having an opportunity to hunt. And I simply don't agree with that premise. This somehow implies that there's a limited number of places on these lakes for waterfowl hunters to hunt. I'll remind you, these are very large lakes. You know, Eufaula, 100,000 acres. Fort Gibson, 14,000 acres. Weber Falls, 11,000 acres. I don't remember Mayo, it's smaller, of course. I would submit there's no shortage of places to hunt with a few seasonal blinds located on some of these lakes. There's obviously more than adequate places. Nobody's showing up at the ramp and saying, boy, too many people out here today, I'm going to the house. I'm not going to waterfowl hunt. There's more than adequate places for people to hunt. So to say that this reduces opportunity, I just don't buy that. And in fact, this is a very unique opportunity that the department provides to waterfowl hunters. And it doesn't happen very many places that Jeff mentioned. But this is a very unique thing that happens here. And a couple of points on that, you know, if somebody wants to have one, the blind drawings, they're wide open if somebody wanted a blind. Some people like to have a blind, some don't. We all do both of those things. The blinds that are out there, they're not locked up and not being used. If anybody isn't using them, other hunters are welcome to use them. So the whole deal about reduction of opportunity to me, it just simply doesn't exist. And that's one of their, obviously one of their big points here. But if you want to see regulations that restrict hunter opportunity, you don't have to look any farther than the department's own regulation book. I mean, do controlled hunts. We close wetland development units at 1 o'clock. We have closed seasons on some species on WMAs, and I could go on with a long list, but you know what I'm talking about. I think I've made the point there, but what that does is it manages hunter activity, it manages wildlife harvest, it improves hunt quality, and it provides hunter and public safety. Those are the tools the department has in using regulations. So I would submit that these regulations that pertain to the duck blind, the seasonal duck blinds, do the exact same things. They manage hunter activity, they reduce hunter conflicts, they improve hunt quality, they provide hunter safety, and they also enhance youth hunting opportunities. That last one, I would just touch on it for a second. That fits right in with the R3 initiative that the department is using right now. And I can tell you from personal experience and other hunters that have been out there, there's been many, many grandkids, nieces and nephews,
Gotta wrap up,
sisters,
Craig.
and brothers that have participated out there, so it's been a good deal. All right, then I'll close, if you'll allow me to close.
Yes, sure.
I'll put this on a more personal level here now. It brings me no pleasure to come here and speak against a department proposal. After spending 35 years working for this agency, working for the wildlife, and working for the sportsmen of Oklahoma. But I felt it was necessary for me to come and give you some of the facts surrounding these blinds. And once again, I would urge you to rescind this proposal and just remind you that these are the constituents that buy the licenses, that buy the duck stamps, that belong to conservation organizations that support this department. With that, I thank you for your time and consideration. I'm sorry I ran over a little bit there.
All right.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you.
Alan Stacy?
I just want to say, Craig, thank you for being here. As obviously this is within my district, and I appreciate your words.
All right, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm definitely going to do my best to stay within that 5-minute limit, so I'm going to talk a little bit faster. My wife tells me from time to time I'm very long-winded. She says in 2 minutes listening to me, her eyes start glazing over. And so, you know, I'm going to try and make that not happen here. Anyway, I know most of you all. I am retired from the Wildlife Department, Alan Stacy. Worked with the wetland, the waterfowl programs for many years. When I did retire almost 10 years ago, I got to continue working some of these same projects, working with some of the same personnel in ODWC, wearing a DU hat. So I am very appreciative of that. I will be very brief here in terms of the points that Craig made. They're valid in terms of this particular issue with regard to doing away with the seasonal blinds. I don't want to do that. I have the perspective of having worked with the wetland and the waterfowl programs now with ODWC for about 38 years, okay? Sometimes I wonder, and I try to remind ODWC administration as well as my DU folks up the ladder above me that when I become dead weight, you need to just kick me out of here, okay? But I still enjoy it. I enjoy it very much. And I appreciate all of the past support the commission, the ODWC administration, the employees I work with give to the wetland and waterfowl programs. I will say this, that in all the wetland waterfowl programs I've worked with, you all know this, almost all of them are very expensive in accommodating our waterfowl hunters around the state. If you think about wetland purchases on lands, some of these historic wetlands the ODWC has purchased over the years, in actually constructing these wetlands and managing them and maintaining them and repairing them. All expensive stuff, very, very expensive. But I share with you in terms of the seasonal waterfowl blind program, that's a very cost-effective program, okay? Takes very low time from a manpower standpoint. Our field guys out there, our wetland biologists, my goodness, they spend a huge amount of time managing these wetlands and getting them up to speed where there's waterfowl hunting opportunities for sportsmen. But this seasonal blind drawing is a good thing. I think all of us like traditions, okay? This is a huge tradition. It's been ultimately very successful over what I understand the last 40 years, okay? So that's very important. It's very important that have there been a few hiccups? Yes, along the way, but overall the system is working. So I strongly encourage you to vote to rescind the changes that have been proposed, okay? And lastly, I just want to thank you very much. I'll put my DU hat back on just briefly and say there is a tremendous partnership that's been ongoing for many, many years here in the state of Oklahoma between ODWC and Ducks Unlimited. And I appreciate y'all's support of that. We're going to continue that support and doing good things for wetlands and waterfowl. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Just
questions?
so there's no confusion, I did reach out to DU early in the process, and they didn't want to touch this issue with a 10-foot pole. So they have no official position on the waterfowl hunting blind proposal. Last but not least, Ben Half, rounding out the former ODWC employee crew.
Hello. My name is Ben Half, and I do know most of you already. But for those of you that I don't know, particularly the folks on this side of the room, as JD mentioned, I am a former department employee also. And I must admit, it's usually easy for me to stand in front of a crowd and talk. This one's tough. I've never had to come to a commission meeting and have anything to present or say, and I've certainly never had to come up here and oppose anything that the Wildlife Department's doing. I ended my employment with this agency at the end of 2022. Prior to that, I would have never come to a commission meeting and had any mission to convince anyone of a decision to be made, because we took care of those sort of things internally. So those of you that are staff members or commissioners that are familiar with who I am and where I've been, you would probably agree that when it came time to have roundtable discussions about decisions or which way the direction of the agency should go or anything like this that has to do with a change, I was very vocal and very outspoken and very involved. As Craig mentioned, I did participate on the duck blind committee. I guess it was 3 years ago. Time gets away, but I was very involved in that, and I represented our Oklahoma game wardens as the game warden I was, and I represented that committee particularly to see where law enforcement could help address some of those issues. At the time, it was communicated those issues were related to a failure to comply with the regulations. So I won't speak to that anymore because I'm not a game warden anymore, but that was my role then. As a game warden, you all know, but I will say on the record, those folks are the face of the agency when it comes to communicating with the public directly. That is their job day to day, is go out, make contacts with the public. So they would always have, and this is no disrespect to anyone else in the agency, but they always have the closest and most accurate impression of what the public thinks or feels or how something is being perceived in the field. Particularly with duck blind drawing, with due respect, I disagree with a couple of points made by a representative from the Corps of Engineers, particularly when we bring up the fact that there are 38 reservoirs in this Tulsa district and only 4 of them have a seasonal blind opportunity. Then what I see is opportunity. I don't see what I see is an opportunity to have a unique experience at those 4. So by removing seasonal blinds, if you only have daily blinds, then you've lost one piece of a puzzle that you used to have. If you're not a duck hunter, what we're talking about is to go in the field and construct a blind that you could set in and be out of the elements and be comfortable and be concealed from waterfowl and enjoy a hunt. If you do not have that opportunity in a public format like this, then the only way to get there is to own property or lease property. It would otherwise be illegal to do this. I don't know when the last time any of you researched hunting leases, but in my country, they average $9 to $12 an acre. That gets pretty expensive. Just across the eastern border into Arkansas, which is less than an hour from where these areas we're talking about, folks spend literally tens of thousands of dollars annually to participate in a duck hunting lease. So in Oklahoma, we're offering an opportunity currently for free for anyone in the state to participate. They put their name in the hat, and they may not be drawn, but on the year that they are drawn, all they have to do is comply with a few rules and go and enjoy a full season's worth of opportunity. On the days they don't show up, that blind is still open to the public. ... That's a big deal. And on the days they're there, it's their blind. They have priority use of it. So if you were to take the same materials and construct a blind for the day and then take it down, you're not going to be able to accomplish near the level of comfort or concealment. I've been duck hunting for almost 30 years now. I've built plenty of temporary blinds. You're grabbing brush, you're stretching netting, and you're doing your best to hide quickly, but you're going to deal with rain, you're going to deal with wind. You're probably not going to have a heat source. Versus the folks that drew the seasonal blind, they're able to construct something to block a wind barrier, block falling moisture. If you turn on heat, or like I like to do in my blind, we have some kind of way to cook breakfast. Folks are comfortable. And from a recruitment standpoint or general enjoyment standpoint, I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it for a long time. When you bring folks out and you can keep them comfortable while you hunt, you increase the level of camaraderie, you increase the level of enjoyment. In short, I think it's a mistake to remove what limited opportunity is left to have a seasonal blind on our public lands. I would also like to be the first one in the group of the 3 guys that are gone to ask this group, do you folks have any questions? about this process? Is anything unclear about how this works, or who may be involved, or what some of these rules are?
Time. Questions?
Any
for
questions?
Ben? Bill, do you want to close out your recommendations on this? Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
Well, first I'll say, appreciate y'all coming in and speaking. I respect all three of these guys, worked with them many years. I think it's our job to constantly evaluate programs, existing programs that we have. If you dial it back to 19, I can't remember exactly when the governor's executive order was given that we standardize and simplify regulations. That may have been part of the start of this, because these are the only 4 left that we have this seasonal duck blinds on. I don't disagree with the comfort angle or any of that. I mean, that's common sense, and I agree with that. But I say also that, all these other reservoirs, it seems to be working as well. They're taking kids, they're taking elderly, they're taking veterans. And so, yes, it's easier, probably if you have a blind out there, a permanent blind, that you can go get in. I understand that. I sent you some information Chairwoman Gaddis asked for Friday, and the facts are these. The number of blinds issued has decreased, the lowest in 23 years. The number of applicants the last 3 years has decreased. And then we talked about the trash and debris issue already. Not saying that they're not used and not important to those people that use them, okay? But those are the facts. And again, I think it's important for us just to continue to reevaluate, just like we talked about deer earlier, our programs. So I'm going to say the recommendation's still going to stand, and I'll let this body decide where we go.
And I might just add one more thing, that I just want to thank Bill and his staff, because, I know there were questions. I fielded some questions about this. Came up 3 years ago. Why are we bringing it up again? Well, number one, our landlord asked for it, and I think that's important that we remember that. They're sitting right here, the Corps of Engineers. This is their property at the end of the day, and we're fortunate enough to be able to manage about 700,000 acres of Corps of Engineers property, I think, roughly. That is, the Corps allows us to make that available for public hunting and fishing opportunity that wouldn't otherwise be used for that opportunity. So I think it's important to remember that. And I think it's important that we listen at least as much to our existing staff and their recommendations. They're the ones on the ground dealing with it. And I just want to make sure nobody has the wrong impression that staff is requesting this because it makes their jobs easier. I fear sometimes that people think that we're seeking changes just because people don't want to work hard or do their jobs. Coming from 30 years of experience in state government and only 7 of it here, the rest of it in other places, I can promise you this is the hardest working group of state employees that you'll find, bar none. And we're very fortunate to have the hardworking crew that we have. And when they elevate recommendations, it's for a reason. And yes, you heard, the landowner, the Corps of Engineers, talk about trash. And we're not talking about people are trashy. That's not what this is about. They build permanent blinds. The lake elevation goes up, flooding, flood retention. These are always going to be prioritized for flood control over any other use at the end of the day. And those duck blinds go underwater. And then the longer they're underwater and you've got wave action, the more they start falling apart and floating around. That's the trash that people are talking about and that the Corps of Engineers and our staff out there are dealing with. So there's that. But bottom line for us, this is about access. We're all about recruiting and retaining more and more hunters, and waterfowl hunting is one of the unique on the increase. in the state of Oklahoma, and that's a great thing. And at the end of the day, I think whatever decision is made by this commission is hopefully with a mind towards how can we increase waterfowl hunting participation. And really that's to me, the crux of the debate here today. There's some arguing that the existing system provides more access, and our staff's belief is that the way we do it with daily blinds across the rest of the state is the opportunity for more hunting access. And it's tough to know exactly how it's going to turn out at the end of the day, but that's really what motivates it and drives it more than anything. So I think anybody here, including our folks up in the region on the ground, would be happy to answer any questions anybody may have. We've kind of got everybody in the room on this issue, so feel free if you've got questions.
I had a question. Bill, does the permitting not provide some accountability for trash and debris? If you see a blind that's in disrepair, can you not call the permit holder and ask them to take care of that?
Yeah, you definitely could, because you know exactly who drew that blind. But the problem is that lake fluctuates, as Jeff was mentioning, and that stuff comes loose and starts floating around or whatever. You don't know who in particular blind came from, is my understanding, part of the problem.
Well, the permit holder ought to make themselves aware when that lake's gonna come up or go down. That ought to be their responsibility, don't you think? I'd like the record to reflect that the commission, this commission sitting here is not staff against commission. We're all together. And it seems to me it's framed in some way this morning that somehow that the staff has different views than the commission. We're all on the same team, and I want that to be reflected. We're going to do what we think's right for the sportsmen and women and the natural resource that we have here in Oklahoma. I just want that to be reflected.
Yeah. And if I framed that in any different way, I did not mean it to come across that way, so I apologize, certainly.
Mr. Chairman, Chairwoman, we met, the Rules Committee met on this, and we have a suggestion. The duck blind rules proposal had the most public comment, and you can see by some of the people participating here is pretty passionate about it. We have a suggestion, and that is to split that rule, I think it's Chapter 25, Part 11, from the other rules, less controversial, and we vote separately on the duck blind issue and vote on the other ones as a whole. So we propose, after looking at the public comments and department staff, that other than that rule on the duck blinds, that the commission approve all those other rules as presented. And I so move.
Do we have a second? Sorry. All right. Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Mabry? Aye. Commissioner Deal?
Aye.
Commissioner Barwick?
Aye.
Commissioner Holder?
Aye.
Commissioner Zelps? Aye. Commissioner Kane?
Aye.
Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. Do we have any more discussion on or questions on the issue?
Now, as to the duck blind rules, it kind of boils down to the trash issue and more hunter opportunity is what it looks like to me. And we also discussed maybe there's some possible alternatives to help address those issues. So the committee proposes to table that particular rule, look at other alternatives. And I don't know if we need a vote on that. We're not changing that rule at this point. I guess we could vote to say that we'll table it until some alternatives come around, and if we have to issue emergency rules, we'll do that, or we'll wait to the next public comment period. But right now, we propose to table that particular rule, Chapter 25, Part 11, as the duck blind rules. And I so move if we need a motion on it.
Okay.
I think you should vote.
Second. Think they should vote on the table?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I second the motion to table.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have roll call.
Commissioner Mabry?
Aye.
Commissioner Deal?
Aye.
Commissioner Barwick?
All right.
Commissioner Holder?
Aye.
Commissioner Zelps?
Aye.
Commissioner Kane?
Aye.
Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. Okay. Excuse me. So I guess it's decided we'll table that part of it and the remainder of it. Yes. All right. And Bill, we have you one more time.
Yes, ma'am. So chapter 30, I'll start, and then Nels are going to come up and cover the shooting ranges. The only proposal we had on here was from our biologist at Okmulgee to allow angler and hunter camping. It was just hunter camping, but there is a pond there, and he's more than happy to open up that opportunity for anglers too. So increased opportunities for us. Nels, shooting range, other part of chapter 30.
Appreciate it, Bill. So I have two sections there on shooting ranges. The first being two changes to the firearms range rules. Probably the most significant of which is we're proposing that the official time to shoot would be from official sunrise to 30 minutes after official sunset. And that is the time that's allowed for deer hunting. So this was a recommendation that came from one of our WMA biologists who is about to receive a shooting range, and his opinion was let them shoot when they can shoot a deer to practice. So the second chunk there in B are archery range rules. We are going to be having archery ranges at a number of our department-owned shooting ranges, including CAW, which just is about to start construction, like within the next week to 2 weeks. And we realized that we did not have rules similar to those for firearms. So we have proposed a slate of rules there, and be glad to answer any questions.
Nels, is that the first archery range, the one going to be in Ponca City?
At a WMA, we have some archery ranges that we partnered with. One, Cherokee Nation, City of Coweta, partnered with one here in Oklahoma City back in the day. But that is the first one on one of our WMAs.
Are you going to standardize those ranges? In other words, the shooting platforms, things like that, or how are you addressing that?
The intent is, and goes for both the archery portion and the firearms portion. The intent is that there'll be a base range that is standard. It's a standard layout. It's a standard plans. There may need to be some tweaks based on the different geography for different locations. And based on the locations, there may or may not be more stations, if you will. So a range like Lexington, we would put in as many units of shooting houses as we could, for example, versus someplace like Optima, which is limited in geography and not going to have near the people that are at Lexington.
Are you going to have sand berms to shoot broadheads into? Or?
We talked about that last week, in fact, and the intent is, you'll see from the rules, the intent is that we are allowing for practice with broadheads, and so that's certainly...
Otherwise, they'd probably shoot them at the other targets.
They're looking at ways to minimize that, for sure.
Yeah. The proposal actually was provided that they bring their own targets, but the Archery Trade Association has something on broadhead, a section on best practices, if you will, for public archery range broadhead. So
yeah, I appreciate the information you sent out on that. That's really helpful. And Bill, I didn't say earlier, but I appreciated all that work you did putting that together Friday. That was real helpful on the duck blinds. Appreciate that.
Yes, I do appreciate that, and I meant to thank you, Butter, for that too.
So I'm excited about those now, those archery ranges. So.
We are too. We're like I said, the bids awarded, and they were going to start this week. In fact, they were supposed to start today, but had a short delay. So we're pretty excited.
Appreciate your work on that.
Any questions for Nels?
Ms. Chairwoman, the Rules Committee met, considered the public comments, recommended to staff, and we recommend to approve those rules, land use rules, as presented. And I so move.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Mabry? Aye. Commissioner Deal?
Aye.
Commissioner Barwick?
Aye.
Commissioner Holder?
Aye.
Commissioner Zelf? Aye. Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. Thank you, Nels. All right, one more thing before we go to the next item is our 2023 Commission Committee assignments. Wanted just to kind of lay those out so everyone is aware. Legislative Rules and Litigation Committee Chair Jim Barwick, members Mark Mabry, John Zelpst, and Rick Holder. Policy, Programs, and Lands, Chairman Chad Dillingham, members Jim Barwick, Jess Kane, and Tim Deal. Retirement and Finance Committee, Chairman Rick Holder, members Mark Mabry, Chad Dillingham, and John Zelpst. Energy and Natural Resources, Chairman Lee Gaddis, members Jess Kane, Chad Dillingham, and Tim Deal. And last item on the agenda, I believe, well, our any new business that was unforeseen in the last 24 hours. Probably not, I don't know of any. All right, and our next meeting is scheduled for March 6th, and we are not certain yet. It's possible that it may be off-site, but we'll keep everyone posted when that develops. Otherwise, I think with that, our meeting is adjourned.
Anything about land?
A little bit.